look out in the air, floating there and looking dead. That right there is a severed head. Lurks and spin, they make a web. On the day we hail the dead, small little spiders crawl unseen, coming to you on Halloween. Carving lanterns for old Jack, bringing all the dead ones back. Was it worth the sweet you got? Paid with the soul the devil caught. Ghosts won't give you any sweets, only tricks and hide the treats. Hoping you dreamt you get a scare, now you're living in your worst nightmare.
I love it!
Thank you, thank you, thank you. My brother made that song,
That's so good!
and I slapped the title on it. I think I didn't link a single thing below, but you can look it up on Spotify. It's called Creeping. I forget. I'll link it. Never you mind.
Cool.
But hello, friends, and welcome to this spooktacular stream. Today we're talking about all things spooky and scary in a craft sense. We're talking about writing in the dark with Tim Waggoner. And with me today, I have the, dare I say, undisputed queen of horror on AuthorTube,
Oh, thank you.
our very own Laura Nettles. Hello, hello, hello.
Hi.
How are you doing on this spooktacular Tuesday, the last Tuesday of the month?
I'm doing pretty well. Roy will be making his presence known because I am not on the bed for snuggles. The audacity.
How dare you?
I know. I'm sitting at a
Also
desk.
love this sword just propped up at the back wall.
I have... there goes a tripod. I have the plaque to go on the
Okay.
wall to mount it, but I'm missing the metal hardware to slide the sword into it.
Oh.
So,
Is it Argon sword?
yeah.
Okay, that's what it looks like.
So I'm waiting for my brother to help me find some hardware and mount it on my beautiful walls.
You can do it yourself, Laura. Never rely on a man for anything. That's
I
the
don't
lesson
have a
I've learned.
car.
Okay, that's very valid. Today, yep, I'm joined by Laura. My name is Stig. I stream every Tuesday, if you didn't know. Laura also does a lot of streams, does a lot of videos, and does a lot of horror writing. So who better to discuss Tiny Shivers with? You can buy Tiny Shivers on Amazon. I should probably have linked that below too. I am so bad. My apologies, but you are getting the professional hot mess, and you're getting the mess version today. We are joined by some lovely people. Bonjour, bonjour, Marlene. Ça va? And howdy, Casey. Love that you're here. What a tune every time it is. I'm going to be sad when October ends and I'm no longer using that. So you certainly can say, Laura, Queen of Horror, Nettles.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, whenever you drop a little horror snippet in the chat, I'm always like, Laura, I'm not going to sleep tonight. Thanks a bunch.
So I may have written a horror story for one of the exercises in here.
Ooh, we can share that after if you want to read it, if you're comfortable doing that.
Sure.
I love like taking craft books and then using them and then showing people what you use them for. That's Laura's official resume name. LOL.
Nice.
It is. Today we're talking about Writing in the Dark by Tim Waggoner. As we said, Tim Waggoner is an American English professor, professor in creative writing and composition at a college in Ohio, ? I think that's what I read up. He's written just about 1 billion books.
I know.
1 billion novels about horror, 1 billion collections of short stories about horror. He's written craft books about horror.
This is his biography.
It is extensive.
It's like, oh my gosh.
It is extensive. So I feel
including tie-ins for things like Supernatural and Alien.
Grimm, The X-Files, Doctor Who, and Transformers, and he's written the novelization of The Kingsman, The Golden Circle, and Resident Evil, the final chapter.
Which I worked on!
Oh, slay, Laura, slay. I never watched the last one, but I did love
the connection.
You are 1 degree away from Tim Waggoner. Isn't that amazing?
I lit the monsters he wrote about.
Yeah. I found... I counted his wiki articles. So I counted 50 novels, 7 collections of short story, and like a plethora of nonfiction and tie-in. So quite the resume. Out of all the authors I've read who's written craft books, I think he might be one that I'm fully ready to believe is capable of his craft, and his craft is horror. So that's about him. Yeah, he teaches at a college in Ohio, so I guess you could sign up for classes. I don't know how it works.
And
College.
he majored in theater, so he knows the
Yeah.
dramatics.
He knows the dramatics, and that's one thing about this book, that it's half craft book and half just telling stories about how he invents horror. So there's a lot of like autobiography. That was autobiographical. That's not how you pronounce
Autobiographical.
autobiographical. Thank you, Laura. Sorry, autobiographical qualities to this craft book, which some people might find strenuous. I think about half the book is him telling stories about some kind of horror story or whatever, and half the book is actual craft advice. So that's something to be aware of when you dive into it. And I'm not sure. There was a billion chapters. One thing I love that each chapter had an exercise to it, so you could do an exercise, because we love a good exercise.
I did a few of them.
Oh my god, that's a lot. Oh, your penmanship though, Laura.
And I did
Slay.
some more of them.
Very pretty.
And some more of them. I have a problem.
Yeah, each chapter had an exercise that you could do. I don't know if there's an exercise book to this. I couldn't find like a little craft book. What is it called?
A workbook.
A workbook. I couldn't find a workbook to it. So each chapter, has an exercise pertaining to the chapter, and each chapter also had something that I loved, which was he calls them flash interviews. So he asked all his very many friends and people he trusted in the genre and other authors. He asked them 2 questions, and then he collected all their answers, and he spread them out through the ends of each chapter, and he called them Voices in the Darkness.
Mhm.
Voices in the Dark, is that what we call them?
I think so.
So you have the chapter, and then you have the exercise, and then you have the Voices in the Dark section, which is interview questions he's asked. And it's like super basic questions, like what makes good horror and like what scares you or whatever it was. So I also found that very interesting. And I also think that adds to the length of the novel, because it's like 300 pages something. She's thick, which I don't always appreciate.
300.
Isn't that? I just felt like I was
Including
reading
the
and reading and reading.
appendices, it's like 231.
That's a baker's 300, babe. I'll allow it.
Including
yeah.
the appendices. Without
It was
it's only
very
210.
lengthy. That was my one thought. That was very lengthy. And I think a majority of it is his stories and his interviews and the exercises. But some people love that. You love this. So I definitely think this book is right up your alley. Was this something that inspired you to write horror? Or did you write this after you're like, I'm going to write spooky stuff?
So I first read The Anatomy of Prose, which turned me on to flash fiction. And the first fiction I wrote was horror. And I was like, I'm having fun with this horror. So then I found this book and read it.
Okay. And you read it a couple of times now, because you reread it for the stream too, which I appreciate. I prepared some banners, some general topics. If you have anything you want to discuss, Laura, just bring it up. I would love for you to share one of the exercises you did, if you're comfortable with that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do maybe a topic or 2. We're going to do a sprint, because I still got to get my word count in. We're going to do some more topics, and maybe you can share, and then another sprint, and then I think we'll say goodbye. So we're going to start with a very vague question. What is horror, Laura? Do you have any ideas, thoughts, dreams, hopes?
To me, horror is flipping awesome.
Okay, and that's the stream. See you later.
So horror is where you are pushed as an author to make sure your character goes through it, to make sure you don't coddle them, to make sure that they are stretched in some way, to make sure that they like are put in uncomfortable situations. A lot of times it's able to be where the character's in an uncomfortable situation and you as a reader are like, if I was in this uncomfortable situation, what would I do? And
I think
yeah,
like an infamous or famous, I think a very well-known aspect of this is, we've all had that conversation with friends at one time in our youth. We're like, I'm in a zombie apocalypse. What should we do?
who's gonna
Which is like
survive?
a result of horror. And that's one of the things he says too in one of the introductory chapters. That, let me just find it. Horror stories allows us to confront our deepest fears through the buffer of fiction, which I
Yes.
thought was very, very on point. And he also said that psychologists suggest that reading and watching horror allows people to develop stronger survival skills, which I thought was pretty interesting too.
Yeah.
Would you survive a zombie apocalypse?
Probably not. I'd make it at least through the first day, I would assume. But
Oh, because we didn't leave the house. Well, you have to walk Roy though.
He's got a pee pad.
He's got a pee pad. He's ready for the apocalypse. I love that.
Yeah, but
would you be one of the people, like, if you got bitten, would you keep it quiet?
No.
You would be like, okay, I got bitten.
Yeah.
Take me out back. Melt me down for glue.
Give me a shotgun. Let me go out there and take out as many as I can in a blaze of glory.
Okay, I like the spirit. I like the spirit. Yeah, you can definitely hear Roy is upset, but like any old man, he just got to learn. We were also joined by Becca. Hello. And we were joined by Keiko from the sick bed. Sniffles got worse, now a fever. I'm so sorry. Hope you're feeling better soon. I pray for a speedy recovery. Wendy joined. Can't really do horror, but I'm peeping in anyway because of FOMO. LOL. We're not going to talk like a gratuitous amount about like different kinds of horror and stuff. This is more like a general conversation about like horror generally, what it does, why it does what it does, and then I want to maybe cover some tips on what you can do if you want to write horror, and then Laura's going to share. You can mute for that if it's scary. Knowing Laura, it'll be scary or a mindfuck.
It's more
or
body
both.
horror.
Okay, that's the one horror genre I just don't fuck with.
So exercise 1 in this book really helped me, and it was, why does horror matter to me as an individual? What do I like and dislike about it? And doing that deep dive in my journal here really helped me kind of flesh out, see what niche I kind of vibe with, which then helps me figure out what my ideal reader is and what my marketing strategy kind of pigeonhole should be. So if you want, I can read my journal entry.
Sure. I would love to pick your brains about horror. That's why you're here, because you're the expert.
Aha! So, I love the heightened emotions in horror. Characters are not coddled and are forced to stretch or break. I love that there is no guarantee the main character will survive, let alone be okay. It keeps readers on their toes and allows for a twist gut impact with the final line/scream. Horrors lend itself to drabbles because the story can have a more definite short story line, a clear ending that hits. I don't like when rape is just thrown in as yet another bad thing to happen to the character. It needs to have a deeper reason for being on the page. Extreme splatterpunk is not my style, and enjoy more of the gothic. With a horror, the romance is not guaranteed to work out, which keeps me invested and guessing. And horror matters to me because it helps me process my own fears and religious guilt. I am other in my family now. I've always loved monsters, but now I identify as them more. I can explore unsafe topics like queer relationships without my parents reading it. They are concerned when I write about demonic stuff and believe I could become possessed, yet I persist. Maybe it's my way to rebel. Have a vampire throuple do what I've been conditioned not to, and I'm now not able to under my parents' roof. Maybe always ask, but why does it have to be so dark? My parents always ask that. Maybe this is how I cope and self-medicate. My life's not so bad if these characters have it worse. The macabre has always fascinated me, even when I was told to avoid it for my soul's sake. I am finding my autonomy through horror. It's a bit of self-exploration through a thick veil of prose and supernatural plot.
Dang, you dug deep for that one.
Yeah. So that's my why I like horror. Thanks,
Becca
Becca.
wants to hug you, so here's an internet hug from Becca and the rest of us. So that's why you horror, though.
That's why I
guess.
horror.
So that's why you scary.
Yes.
Which I think are perfectly valid reasons, and also in line with what Waggoner says about it. He has a quote that I really, really loved, and it just sounded so gruesome. But he states that horror comes from a violation of reality, and it's just like, ugh, that is very scary to like tap into as a writer, I guess, because like there's different ways of doing it. There's like slasher movies that are just like dumb, silly entertainment stuff, and then there's like the deep stuff, like the kind of interconnecting human stuff. He talks about a lot of the fear of the unknown and how you can use that as an advantage. And he also talks about how horror stories aren't about monsters; they're about people, and like the horror isn't what's happening to them; it's what's happening inside the character's head, which I think is a very, very scary thought. I don't like to dig too deep into my emotions, so horror is not something I fuck with. I love a good ghost story though. Ghosting and demonic possessions, stuff like that. I fuck with that, but I don't like the kind of when human emotion takes like physical forms in a splasher, gore, body kind of sense. Like, I think, what's that fucking missed game? Silent Hill. Silent Hill is very well known for like having gruesome monsters that haunt you through the game or the movie, I guess. And these horrors are kind of just different representations of like emotions like guilt and anger and like also kind of physical representation for the kind of horrible stuff that humans do to each other, which is where I think horror gets scary for me at least. But you have mastered it for sure because you shared a lot of snippets from your horror story, and they're always like, as you say, you do a lot of drabbles, and the drabble kind of gets very punchy with the horror element. I feel like because you just dropped into the world, and then as soon as you're looking around, you just pick back up again. And I think that's super, super scary as a writer and as a reader and as a human person.
Yeah, so I actually have a horror flash fiction that got on a podcast about a physical representation of trauma, and it was about the manifestation of the atrocities in a concentration camp.
Oh, God.
Yeah, so that one was intense. But normally the fears and stuff that I explore in my more personal horror stories are ones that go with my personal violations of reality, where I see hallucinations and hear hallucinations sometimes when I'm not on my medication. And so growing up with that and having it through college until I finally got diagnosed, I'm able to pull from what's real, what's not, and trying to explore it. And I've been to therapy, so like I have some safeguards in place, so I'm not diving full on into trauma that's not ready to be opened. But like having that safe space to explore that has been very intriguing.
I can only imagine. Do you ever write stuff that's just for you and that you'll never share with anyone, like not online podcast competition stuff, or do you like? Are you comfortable with sharing everything you write?
I crave validation, so I share everything.
Okay, so you're a writer. She's working late because she's a writer. It all checks out. Hello, 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 Manuk. We're talking about writing in the dark and writing horror because it's October and it's spooky month. So I thought that was appropriate. And then Laura was available. So I was like, who more appropriate? And we shall give it, Laura. Let's see if I missed some comments earlier. Stieg, I love the little scarf is giving Fred and the Scooby Gang. LOL. Thank you so much. I am nothing if not an investigative little queer person, which I think, well, Fred and Daphne, but he could be bi. That's a thing.
It's like if
But
Fred
yeah,
was a cowboy.
Fred. Yeah, I'm a cowboy. Fred is who I am today. Marlon says that horror is subjective, which I love. Something would be much scarier to one person than another.
Yeah.
I'm literally watching Kingdom right now. Speaking of zombies.
Yeah.
Though Wendy doesn't fuck with horror, she can definitely appreciate it as a craft. We're also joined by Cool Gamer. Hello, hello, hello. Keiko is physically not well, but a happy mood because I pre-ordered my game today. Are you pre-ordering the new
Nice.
Sims expansion? Question mark. Is that what this is about, or is there another game? Call in.
I
I'm
think
curious.
that's a common thread. If there's a game that most writers play, it's Sims.
Maybe it's just because we like creating storylines. That's how I play Sims. I create like fictional. Well, all Sims games are fictional, but I create like fictional storylines for my characters, and then I act them out.
Dragon Age.
Oh, Dragon Age. Yep. You've been talking about this for a hot minute, so I should have known this. And by a hot minute, I mean 10 years. Minook was eternally screaming Dragon Age. It's because you can become a successful writer in The Sims. LOL. I mean, that's the easiest career. You're just churning out books and manuscripts and selling them, and then you get like money for it, which is called royalties. There you go. So that's why I like it. Sims can be somewhere where the sun doesn't shine because they should first fix the game. That is fair. Keiko says that I find fascinating how people can craft horror stories and use sometimes the most simplest fears that humans have. I love it when ghost stories, when they are like Haunting of Hill House is famous for this. Spoiler if you haven't watched it, you should watch it. It's a great show. But like there's a bunch of siblings there, and each sibling kind of represents the stage of grief, and I'm just like, shit like that I'll fuck with. Thank you for sharing, Laura, says Marlin. I love hearing your journey in loving horror. That is beautiful.
Thanks.
And also a little virtual hug pile.
I
love that because sometimes supernatural imagery, supernatural imaginary, that says, monsters aren't scary to me, but what becomes horrific is what real people could do. So that's definition tracks. In the novel, he was talking about how humans are sometimes the monsters in novels and horror, and that's the scary shit. Becca says, I steered away from horror growing up because when I was young, I was basically living through horror. But the script I'm working on now is fictionalizing those events, and it's definitely helping me.
I actually did a podcast interview with D.L. Tillery about healing through horror, about writing it and reading it.
Dang. Do you have a wrench? Do you want to drop it in chat if people want to check it out? If not, you can drop it in private chat and I'll drop it. Can I wrench you right here and right now? Is that something within my power?
I don't know because am I wrenched? Me. No.
Can I give you a wrench? Delete comment, put user in timeout, ban user and delete their comments. Let's not do that.
I'm banned.
There you go. Add as moderator. Did this work? Casey says, honestly, that is why a lot of sexual assault survivors are into dark romance. Laura is indeed wrenched. Welcome to a very exclusive gang consisting of you and Marlin, I think, and maybe the other troublemakers. Maybe Mars. Minook says about Dragon Age. Nope, Dragon Inquisition. Dragon Age? Which one was it? One of them. Dragon Age. I haven't pre-ordered, but I'm going to play it for sure when it's out. I was just screaming because you were talking about it before I knew the answer. Burnt Out Gifted Kid. Hello. Healing Through Horror podcast, dropped by Laura.
That's the episode is Healing Through Horror. The podcast is actually called Twisted Tendrils, Horrific Writing Advice.
And this is the game, Dragon Age Belgard. Yeah, so horror, as we talked about, is something that is a violation of reality. You know, it's
Mhm.
the fear of the unknown, and horror stories aren't about monsters, they're about the people, and the
Yeah.
horror happens inside people's head. It doesn't happen to them, if that makes sense. It's an
So
emotion and not a physical thing. It
I
can be.
loved the little end example. Like, if there's a monster alone in the woods, it's not a horror story. If there's a person alone in the woods who thinks there's a monster coming closer, that's a horror story, even if there's
Yeah.
no monster at all.
Yeah. He had a lot of good examples that I really appreciated, because that's how I kind of visualize things and concepts. I think that's it for this first section of the talk. Um, I also
Yeah.
love how connected to the economy and the state of the world horror stories are. LOL. I hope he talked about it in the book. He did talk
Did.
about kind of. He talked about a bunch of things that inspire horror and how you can be inspired to write horror. I'm going to go through them after the sprint. And it specifically mentions like how kind of natural disaster horror will be a thing that's coming up. Political
AI
horror
horror.
has been a lot. AI horror is going to be on the uprising. So our world definitely reflects in fiction and like the current concerns. So he did talk about that. So your hopes and prayers were answered, Malin. Let's do a little Laura timer. Do you have a horror timer? I don't think you have. You're just cozy timers.
I even have a graveyard timer.
Me and just looking up these timers. Oh, you also have a bunch of horror stories on your audio, on your YouTube thingamajig. God, you know what I'm trying to say. You have a bunch of horror stories in a YouTube playlist. There you go.
Yeah.
A graveyard timer.
Yeah, I do have a pumpkin timer and a forest timer as well. Um,
I'm trying to looking for something in the 30 bracket.
I think the witch hat one is.
Oh, Halloween harvest timer. That seems appropriate for the sprint. I know, Roy. You're gonna get some cuddles soon.
Yeah. I'm giving in.
This wicked life. Let's see. Bloop, bloop, bloop. We're not gonna do 45 minutes. We're gonna do
I'm coming, sir.
the G. No, we're gonna do 29:53, I guess. Yep, we're gonna do a sprint. Yeah, Roy, it's our stream ghost. It's the longing and the pain in the background.
Yeah.
Okay, coming back and talking more about horror after the sprint.
Delicious.
Let's see. What if I just never came back and the stream just went on and on and on forever? That's a horror story for you.
There you go.
How was that sprint for you, Laura?
Good. My packages arrived. Roy saved me from the postman while I was
I'm sure you
signing
were in
for
imminent
them.
danger.
Mm-hmm. He was there licking his shin. So
Oh, you
yeah.
actually attacked him? Oh, Roy licked the postman's shin.
Yeah.
The postman did not lick his own shin. Okay.
No. No.
Got the logistics clear. I did a bunch of writing in my novel at 700 words for the day, so only a couple hundred go before I've reached today's goal. Yeah. If you're just joined us, we're talking about Writing in the Dark by Tim Waggoner. It's a horror. It's a craft book on writing about writing horror. We talked a little bit about what horror is, what it means to us, and we've talked a little bit about. Well, you've talked a little bit about why you love horror
Mm-hmm.
and what you look for in horror. So we've kind of talked about what horror is, but I also want to talk a little bit about what a monster is. Because a monster can mean so many different things, according to Mr. Critically acclaimed Tim Wagner. What is a monster to you, Laura?
Something that is different than what's expected. So
Okay.
either it's a person acting outside of social norms, like a serial killer, or something that is outside the realm of um, physics, like Frankenstein's monster. Like, I guess he's within the realm of that physics, but like unnatural in some way. So
Okay.
something that breaks reality in a certain way.
And as we talked about, um, did I delete that? No. Horror comes from a violation of reality.
Mhm.
So it stands to conclude that the monster, in whatever way, shape, or form it takes in your novel, or story, or your dribble, nope, that's something else.
Drabble.
Drabble, there you go. That if horror comes from a violation of reality, the monster is the violator in whatever way, shape, or form that comes. He has a whole spiel about how horror stories aren't about monsters; they're about how people react to monsters, which I find very fascinating. He also talks about how did he phrase that? Something about uh, it's in the beginning when he talks about fear of the unknown and how that's the core to telling good horror stories, and that the dark, like quote unquote, is like the blank canvas which upon you can write. He says something that I don't know. Something about me is that I'm a little scaredy cat. When I was a kid slash teen, I would watch horror movies, get so scared that I feared for my life. And the thing I did to kind of take the edge off, and that sounds dramatic for a 13-year-old, but I'd watch the behind the scenes of the DVD at
Yeah.
the time. I'd watch the behind the scenes of how they made the thing, so I wouldn't get so scared. I especially remember watching. Is there a 90s or early 2000 movie of Haunting of Hill House?
I
Is that what that
think
was
so.
called? Haunting of Hill House. I remember watching that in the middle of the day with my friend on her tiny, tiny, tiny travel TV that she had in her room. Uh, and I remember just being scared out of the haunting. Is that it? No. I just remember being scared out of my mind from that movie. Um, but then, and this is when in the middle of the day in the summer, so it was light outside. Nothing ever like scary happened. Uh, but then I remember when they revealed the monster, I was like, That's it. There's a little CGI, little speck on the screen. That's not scary at all. Because to me, the anticipation of being scared is a lot worse than actually the scary stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the anticipation that I dread. It's the kind of, especially jump scares, but that like everyone jumps from that. Bye. Good luck on your Dragon Age. I hope it is everything you want and more out of a game. It's it's kind of uh, it sucks waiting for something and then it just doesn't pan out the way you want it to.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but then
There
they,
was
yeah.
there's a Lovecraftian horror book novella that I read that I absolutely love. Like it has all the setup of there's something cosmic, some cosmic entity we can't quite understand that like has some effects on our world. And this whole thing is built up like there's this book with this ancient text that burns when it hits sunlight. Like but this old crabby lady really wants it for something occult. And so like the main character is the courier to try and deliver it to her, but like I don't know. So there's like all this setup going on and on. And then when they open the portal basically and step into the world of the creature, it cuts to black. And then it cuts back when he comes back to our world. And it's like, what happened? Oh no! So they never
Oh
actually
wow.
show the monster, they just show the effects. And
What did you call
so
it?
it's called The Ballad of Black Tom
The Ballad of Black Tom. That sounds
by
interesting.
Victor Lavelle. But yeah, oh my gosh, so good.
That sounds intriguing. I will have to check that out.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this he talks about how you shouldn't over-explain the supernatural and how you shouldn't
Yeah.
kind of over-explain it. And he suggests not naming it. Like you keep the reader guessing, keep them uncertain, keep them uncomfortable, make the story not safe,
Mm-hmm.
and then you as a writer can harness that power of the unknown. And I thought that was really interesting because I'm usually, as someone who grew up being scared of horror movie but loving to watch it, like figuring it out, like behind the scenes stuff, figuring out who the monster is, how they made it, that like sort of took the edge away. So it kind of makes sense to me, like that advice and that like whole section he did on how the unknown is the scariest thing we can see.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I just thought it was fascinating, and I thought it was such an interesting concept. Marlin says it's also a known fact that people's imagination will conjure much more horror than a description of a monster ever could. Horror is the undescribed, unshown, untold. Dun dun dun. There was also some commotion for Roy. Skin liquor.
He's a shin licker, yeah, for sure.
Oh, shin, not skin. Yeah, sorry, I'm illiterate today. Shin licker, what a title. Roy is a monster because he licks shins, which goes against expectations of how a dog should react to a postman. Does it, though?
He's a cute monster, though.
Yeah. So that's something I found very fascinating when he talked about that, about the unknown, and kind of the scariest thing is not knowing what lurks in the shadow. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought that was really fascinating. Uh,
Yeah, so that's one thing that I kind of would like to work on in my horror because I like to write like physical monsters that show up. Like, even though they're supposed to be cosmic and stuff. Like, my middle grade horror, the plant lady, she's there in all her planty glory, trying to make fertilizer out of children. And, like,
as is her right.
yeah. So it's like, but I do make the main character have a vivid imagination. And so the line blurs between what's a daydream and what's real. What's a fear induced hallucination and what's real. What is a nightmare when he's sleeping, because he has this ability where when color seeps from his dreams and it turns black and white, they're more like seer dreams. Like he can see what's really going on. So it's like what's reality, what's not. So I do have some of that. But
Okay.
you totally see Miss Sundew in all her planty glory.
Why do you think you're so attracted to a physical manifestation of horror and not just the suspense? Is it an experience thing, or is it just like, because people have, different strokes for different folks and all that?
I think it's just cool design.
That's very valid. And you're a very visual person because you work in movies. So I think like you makes sense that you're also a very visual writer to me. I don't know how you feel about that, but because you're very good at descriptions and like kind of invoking a sensation in your writing. I don't know. Uh, but yeah, that's so fascinating. I don't know. Because the one thing I've been struggling with in my story, my cowboy story, it has like, and this is something he talks about also, that you should have like one, how did he phrase it? You should have like when you craft your story. Let's see, how did he
The
phrase
5
it?
flavors, the 5 color palette.
Yes, he talked about that, but this
Mhm.
was something he talked about how you should have like you should only have one fuck up or like one monster, quote unquote. It can have like
Yeah.
it can have effects on like the world around, but like you should always just have like one major
Like it could
violation of
be a
reality.
horde of zombies, but it's one horde of zombies. It could be one
Yeah,
vampire. It could be like something like that. Because when you start adding vampires and werewolves and whatever, it turns more
yeah,
into fantasy than just horror.
yeah. So I thought that was really fascinating how he talked like about the. Did he say like you should have one violation of reality? Was that the phrasing he used?
Yeah.
And then that will obviously ripple through your story, and it should ripple through your story.
Mm-hmm.
But that one violation, should be the center stage, and then the effects is what the characters experience. And I thought it was really fascinating because I've been struggling in my story. Like I have this one violation of reality that has had a huge, tremendous effect on the world around it, but I never knew the reason for the violation. Like I don't know. Like it's just there. So I've been really struggling to kind of, okay, I got to figure out where this come from. Why is it? And like, why does why does it do what it does? Like, what's the story, Morning Glory? But then I thought it was so fascinating reading Tim Waggoner. It's like, you don't need to know. People shouldn't know. So then I was like, do I not tell the story of the origin of this like one violation of reality? Um, or should I tell it? I don't know. I'm writing fantasy and not horror though, so I feel like maybe the rules are a bit more lenient. But I thought it
Mm-hmm.
was a very interesting concept that he brought up.
Yeah, he was saying that when you have a lot of different types of monsters and stuff, it can also turn more into an action adventure.
Yes.
So
I also found it very fascinating when he went through all the genres of horror.
mhm.
I counted 27 genres that he listed in his book and like explained, organized into major and niche subgenres. So he lists 10 major and 17 niche genres. I was just like, that's a lot of genres. What's your favorite horror genre? Is there something you don't like or don't appreciate? Or because you mentioned body horror, and I also know you're a slut for a gothic horror.
Yes, I am. Let's see. I'm pretty sure I answered it in here. Let's see. I guess I didn't. So I love cosmic horror. I love gothic horror. And I like to have a hint of erotic horror in some of my flashes and stuff.
Okay.
And yeah, like in the body horror one, it hints at what the main character wishes was happening. But yeah, so
Gays everywhere would like to know: would you ever write a cosmic horror in the gothic setting, Laura?
I would love to. I read one and it made me want to write my own in a different direction than they went.
Oh, okay.
So it's like, I see what you did there. I wish it went this way. Let's do it. But the only thing is that would be a whole nother novel whip on the pile. So
Yeah, you're not short of ideas. I'll give you that.
yeah.
The 10 major lists. That was not good diction. The 10 major subgenre lists is supernatural, psychological, realistic, quiet, extreme, literary, cosmic, erotic, body, and surreal. Do you fuck with all of those?
I don't usually go for extreme horror. I've read a couple of pages of a Wrath James White story, which had the most visceral description of a wound, a gash wound of like
Ugh.
a toothless gummy smile. It was like, oh,
Ugh. That's
oh,
very visceral.
yeah. So like, it's not usually my jam, but I wouldn't say no to, like, I wouldn't veto reading one without knowing what it's about.
That's fair.
But yeah, I
And
usually don't go for those.
out of the niche genres he mentions, there's young adult horror, dark fantasy, the weird, pulp horror, creature feature horror, transgressive horror, gothic horror, humorous horror, apocalyptic horror, survival, folk, science fiction, country slash small town slash urban horror, social horror, religious, satanic horror, supernatural thriller, and dark crime, dark suspense, and dark mystery. So there's literally something for everyone, and often categories will blend and mix and overlap. But I never thought about the fact that there was so many gosh dang categories of horror. But that makes sense. But also, I don't really fuck with horror. Like, I do some creature I can appreciate. I like a good cosmic moment, a ghost, demonic possession, yes. But yeah, usually I'm not too keen on anything body, sexual, anything like Ryan Murphy style. I can appreciate some of it, but then it soon turns into like a farce, I feel like. Um, so I don't, yeah. Gaze Everywhere says, I don't fuck with body horror, just cannot do it, but I love body horror after it's done the transformation, but without the description of the changing, if that makes sense.
That's the best part of the transformation.
Same Gaze Everywhere, that's the main type I can't. Never catch me watching the humans. Ugh. Even just reading it makes me uncomfortable, Marlon. Also, like, Saw, hate it. Torture porn, not for me.
I've never seen Saw on purpose. So
yeah, no, I just yeah, no, don't like it. Don't like it a bit. I also want to talk a little bit about how you go about creating your horror, like, because your horror, as we talked about, features a lot of monsters and a lot of creatures and a lot of like physical representations of the thing, and you're very like descriptive, and you love a good description, as we talked about, a mood setter, trend setter, jet setter.
I wish.
How do you go about finding your ideas? Because you have a lot of them. And we're going to talk in, because he mentioned he has an entire chapter like how can you harness your fear and make it into a story. But I want to hear your point of view first.
So for me, my plant lady in my middle grade is a direct response to my trauma from the Goosebumps episode that a substitute teacher showed us in elementary school.
Okay, scarred for life.
A plant person replaced the dad, and I was like, heck no! And I was terrified for weeks that my parents are going to be replaced by plant people, and it was going to be horrible. But yeah, so that's where that one came from. And I was just looking up carnivorous plants because the plant person is not carnivorous in the episode. So I was looking up plants and I found the sundew plant. And so I kind of merged it with Audrey 2 from Little Shop of Horrors with a little bit of Venus flytrap. And so
Feed me, Seymour.
exactly. So I kind of mushed them together and got Miss Sundew. But
have you ever written something just because you had the idea and then you read it and like, oh wait, this is actually my trauma. Oops.
no.
Okay. Is there always an intention behind your horror? Like, do you set out to do something or invoke something? Or you just like fuck around and find out?
It depends. I write a lot for themed anthologies, and so
Okay, that makes
um,
sense.
I need to follow what the theme is for that month or quarter or whatever. And so I'll incorporate um, whether it's a Dracula retelling. So I did one where I wrote from Lucy's point of view, but it was taking place in Georgia in the
Oh,
US down by the Okefenokee swamp. So
something about the South and vampires that just it shouldn't go together, but it does go together.
yeah, so I knew about the swamp because when I was a missionary, another girl I was a missionary with was from there. So I heard
Oh,
about it.
okay.
And so I pulled that, did some research, found about like the honey swamp and placed it down there. No, the honey swamp was for a different story. But anyway, just I pull from many different influences. I usually start with what opening image do I want, um,
Okay.
and pants from there.
Do you write exclusively short stories when it comes to horror, or do you write novel length
I
for horror
have
work?
I have a novel length that I attempted to write based off of one of the monsters that he mentions in here, which was the reverse cannibal. So
What is the reverse cannibal?
you feed parts of yourself to them.
No. Thank
Yeah,
you. Pass.
yeah. So I had that for my main character, and it was in the near future in California, and he's not quite human. And so his flesh, when he feeds it or gets bit by something, will transform them into cannibalistic monsters. So he's got to be careful. He'll have a horde of these creatures. So
As it does, as it does.
yeah. Yes, Robin.
Colin says, not me having cheese and bread dinner while Laura talks about this. Yeah, maybe you are the bread, Malin. Ever thought about that? Gaze Everywhere says, I think I love folk horror so much because that's like mythos almost, but it's usually not the myth that is the monster so much that it is the believers. Yeah, I also love a good folk horror like Midsummer. I think is such a fascinating take on horror. Visually stunning, also metaphorically stunning. Uh, but yeah, I can fuck with like folk horror and mythical horror. And what's that bee movie where Nicolas Cage is like, not the bees, not
The
the
Wicker
bees?
Man.
Yeah, the Wicker Man, like sort of kind of pagan-esque
Mm,
rituals in the woods or in the village community. I
yeah.
do fuck with that. I do like
I'm
that.
looking for my mood board for my folk horror story.
Ooh, share of a class if you want to. Malin says, I love horror with a good background lore, though, something bordering more on fantasy. I do agree. Cabin in the Woods was amazing. I didn't know the plot twist in it, so when I started watching it, I'm like, oh God, buckle up. But then it just turns so like the latter half of the movie, after the plot twist is revealed, it's just like, whoa, insane. Here is Laura's little mood board. Or maybe
Yeah.
not. There you go. Oh,
So takes
if you're
place
looking
down.
for if you're looking for song recommendations for this vibe, Alligator Tears by Beyonce from her latest album fits this vibe perfectly.
Mm. So it's World War II, and down at Honey Island Swamp, Louisiana, and there's a group of people that are feeding people within that come to the town to the albino alligator. Um, and so people are going missing, and so they send a detective down from like New York to go investigate what's going on. And so he shows up, and they're gonna try and feed him to the alligator.
Is this a
But
short story?
yeah,
My God, I want to read this now. Ugh, I love
so
like
the
this house.
alligator is
That's
pregnant with a
aesthetic.
ton of little alligators, and so
Oh God. Now
yeah,
we're bordering body horror.
yeah.
But this is very visually stunning, very
So
evocative. There you go. Not me using my SAT words.
you can hear the alligator coming by the sound of its unborn young.
Uh, well, guys think it's stunning. Malin says, "Ooh, would you look at that?"
Yeah.
Alpha One says nice. I'm not sure if I've seen you around Alpha before, but welcome. I'm like a spider. Slay. Miranda has like 2 seconds, but wanted to say hi. Hi, girly pop. Thank you so much for showing by. Gates Everywhere says, watched the original Wicker Man recently, and it's so like, damn, the villain was just the protagonist from the jump. Do not tell me about the Nick Cage one. I will beat you with hammers.
I did watch the Nick Cage one as well, but I've seen both.
I don't know. I just love the scene where it's like obvious not bees there, and it's just like, no, the bees. And it's just
like, dude, they're gonna be in your mouth now if they were real.
Yeah. That's funny to me. Malin says, also love horror where we end up with a winner, someone you can root for, like Ready or Not. Oh, love Ready or Not. Did you see they're making a sequel, Malin? Buckle up. And Cabin in the Woods also had that. Yeah. Look, Nick Cage is just an icon in anything he plays anyway.
He crushed it in Renfield as Dracula.
Never seen that.
He literally, he ate the scenery. He was so over the top. It was great.
Okay. I feel like that works for Crocodile. Crocodile? Nope. Dracula.
Yeah.
There you go. A twist on Hook's Crocodile. Ooh. It's a detective named Detective Hook?
No.
Laura, have you watched Abigail?
I have not.
What is Abigail? Did she see Goody Proctor in the woods?
I think Abigail is the prequel to The Conjuring with the doll.
That's Abigail?
I think. No, that's Annabelle. Sorry.
That's Annabelle, yeah.
No, Abigail's the
After a group of criminals kidnap the ballerina daughter of a powerful underworld figure, they retreat to an isolated mansion, unaware that they're locked inside with no normal little girl.
She's a vampire, I think.
It was originally meant to be called Dracula's daughter, so it says a lot.
Yeah.
She's a ballerina vamp. I do love a good like Penny Dreadful horror too. Like that I can fuck with. But I will say the camp energy Sir Christopher Lee gives in the OG performance is unmatched. Oh, the new vampire movie. Have you guys seen Dracula's Daughter / Abigail?
I've seen the original Dracula's Daughter. I own it on DVD.
Oh, DVD.
Yeah.
Dracula's Daughter. I do love the Dracula universe. Oh, this looks old, so of course you've seen it. 1936. Okay.
Yeah.
Hello. Who's in it?
It's very sapphic coded.
Okay.
They had to try and get around the censors.
As they should. Yeah. Dracula's Daughter is already a movie, very good, according to Gaze Everywhere. It's in the same universe as Ready or Not, so apparently there's a portrait of the Ready or Not fam ancestors in the house in Abigail. Oh, okay. Love that. I might watch it, though, because I love Ready or Not. But we're not here to talk about movies. We're here to talk about Writing in the Dark by Tim Waggoner. We've talked a little bit about what horror is and what monsters is. And I think we're going to cover this, and then we're going to do... do you have a time for a sprint? Yeah. Well, we're going to do this, a sprint, and then if you want to read the short story you had, that's kind of the pied à la résistance on the stream, and then we'll wrap up, I think. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Oh, I like your Halloween jumper, Laura, says Alpha One.
It's over the garden wall.
Have not watched it, but it looks immensely cute.
It's so good. Elijah Wood is the main character's voice.
Okay. Already
so
here for
Baggins. It. And then Tim Curry is in it. Okay. The guy who's Doc Brown from Back to the Future is in it. Else I don't remember, but it's just so good.
I've been in my Halloween movie era this last week, so I'm looking for anything to watch. So maybe I'll watch Over the Garden Wall.
Too.
Dang. Gaze Everywhere. I think we should bring back pulpy gothic horror. Any thoughts, Laura?
the closest thing to pulpy gothic I've read recently was House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson. It wasn't very pulpy, but it was a time. It was fun.
Guess
Yeah.
Everywhere says movies like Dragon Wick or anything with Vincent Price you can now only watch via Google Doc now, I think, which sucks major ass. But Malin wants to watch Over the Garden Wall.
Yeah, it's so cute.
Where can you watch it?
I bought the episodes on Amazon.
Oh, it's a series.
Yeah. There's like
Is it
6 episodes that are cut in half, so like 12 episodes in 6 running times. So there's like episodes 1 and 2 is episode 1.
okay? Because streaming service took it down and we're no longer put it up. Okay, how to horror. Laura, you're reading a prompt in one of the magazines that you submit to. What do you
Yes.
do? Like, how do you sit down and create horror?
Well,
Let the children know.
children.
I've gathered a list of like the suggestions that he has for like where to get weird ideas, but as always, we're going to ask Laura first and then Man second.
Okay. I have something to show for that.
Oh, a pretty little notebook. Very Laura coded of you.
It is dot grid, so I like it.
She is thick.
Yeah. So, like one of them, the theme was unnatural. So I wrote unnatural in the middle and did a spider
Okay.
web of what's unnatural for me. So possession, body horror, aliens, weather.
The weather is unnatural for you.
Sometimes. And
Laura's
then
like,
just
I
brainstorm
don't like
from
weather.
there.
I don't trust her.
So I did that. Ghost Story, Headless Horseman. Where is my Trinidad one? Aha! This is the one
Okay.
for my story idea of where you're born pregnant.
Oh,
And so,
okay, that's my own personal fear. Oh my god.
yeah, so what could that entail? What would happen for that? And so I'll do a mind map like that.
Okay.
And then sometimes I will do a couple bullet points of what I think should happen in the story. And then I just go for it.
Do you always know your endings before you start, or is that something you explore?
I explore.
Okay.
I like what Tim Waggoner says, where you don't want to be too cliche and predictable. You need to turn things on its head and stuff. And so while I write, I'll set things up and I'll be like, okay, how can I turn that on its head? And then do that.
He did have a section which, oh, where can I find that? I have a million notes for this, so just me looking through everything I own. He did have like, because he talked about like different types of monsters. Like he talked about like how monsters as threats and obstacles, as metaphors, symbol themes, protagonists, objects, human monsters, single monster versus race of monster, all that. But then he also says something that I found really interesting, and it's kind of what you're saying, that take a monster, take something that is known, and boil it down to its essence, and then build up from that. So he has a list of a lot of like, what do they call them? Qualities.
Archetypes?
Prime underlying qualities. I've written qualirt. Don't know what that means, but I think that's supposed to say qualities. So like one quality is a predator, another one is tormentor, one is controller, one is disease spreader, one is agent of chaos.
So that's
one is
part
a
of horror
conqueror.
tropes deconstructed.
Yes.
So horror tropes.
Where no monster has gone before, the chapter is called.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really fascinating, like how to boil down the monster and then build up from that. I'm heading out, says Casey. Have a great rest of the stream, everyone. Bye. Thanks for being here. Marlon says, step 1, ask yourself what movie would Nick Cage agree to. Step 2, write it. How to write horror, let your intrusive thoughts out on paper. LOL. Yeah, he does state actually some really good ways to go about, and some really traumatic ways actually to experience horror. He says that you can focus on your own personal fears and give them shivery life on the page.
Mm-hmm.
He said, make a list of your childhood boogeymen and childhood trauma, uh,
That's my middle grade.
and write at least a paragraph about each item. Try to focus on your feelings and what sparked those feelings. Remember, horror is an emotion.
Yeah.
Uh, if you want to, make a list of any disturbing events in your childhood: schoolyard bullies, severe illness, death of friends and family members. Like, it is a lot of emotional debt to be paid when you write horror, apparently.
Yeah.
Pay attention to events in the news which upsets and anger you, stories that arouse an emotional reaction in you, stories which fascinates you. And that's where he kind of talks about how horror stories mirror real life events and like how you can see what's going on in the world reflected in the literature that is posted. He says you could keep a dream journal. Uh, he says to think about what you treasure, what you love, and what if these things were threatened, removed, altered, turned against you? How would you feel and what would you do about it? He has a formula that I thought was funny because it's just so nonsensical, but he says weird observation plus seemingly unrelated ID plus emotional core equals horror.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just okay,
Like,
sure.
I did write something for there. Where'd it go? Okay, so weird observation plus seemingly unrelated idea plus emotional core. So the two that I wrote down really quick were parents traveling a lot, plant people spreading seeds. We are not who our parents are.
Oh, okay. Is that
Or
for Miss Sundrop? Miss Sundu?
no, this is just something I just wrote.
Okay.
A pack of Grims following me is one hallucination I had. Plus, I learned something forbidden. Plus, what knowledge is worth saving death's hand in the everyday? Knowledge given, not sought, still leads to responsibility.
Dang.
So, kind of mushing those together.
Mullen says I actually often have nightmares of people trying to break into my house while I'm there. So maybe I should put that down on paper. You should watch The Purge. I have very much recurring nightmares of losing all my teeth. That's,
I used to
oh
have
my
those.
God. Oof, just talking about it makes me, and it means something apparently, but I don't know. I've had it my entire life.
Also, being able to find your irrational fears, things that you know aren't there, but you still have that thought in the back of your mind. Like me in Toronto, there's a vent above my bed. I'm just terrified that one day I'm going to look up and there's going to be eyes looking out through my vent.
Absolutely not, Laura. He also says that if you want to write truly effective horror, don't merely recycle the imagining of others, and that you should write the stories only you can tell. So that goes back to like, take a monster archetype, boil it down to its essence, and then build your trauma on top of that, basically. So that's, I guess, how to horror.
Yeah. I liked the exercise of looking around you and find what could be wrong with reality. What's wrong with what you're seeing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that exercise was very fun.
I think the teeth dream is associated with loss. Oh my God. Yeah, and I think that boils down to, as I keep coming back to, horror comes from a violation of reality. And I think that's very fascinating. I think that's all we're going to talk about horror for now. We're going to do a little wrap up. You're going to actually, do you have your short story now? Can you read it now?
Yeah.
Because if you read it now, we can do a little sprint and then we could do a wrap up with my tried and true questions of reviewing this book in its entirety. And then we can wrap up after that.
Cool.
Do you want to set the scene? Like, what inspired this horror story? How did you go about writing it? And yeah.
Okay. So this was okay. I read a manga that was a romance between two vampires.
So
And
far, very Laura coded.
In the back, there was an ad saying, you might be interested in this manga. And so I looked it up, and it was about an anatomist. And I was like, that is very disturbing. I read the little sample pages, and I was like, I don't think I can do this.
An anatomist? What is that?
Uh-huh. So it's someone who dissects someone while they're alive to study the muscles, how they work, where they're attached. So this was pre-modern medicine. This is how they would figure out physiology.
Yeah, I'm not about that. But do share.
Yeah.
Wait. Laura said she can't do this.
I
If
read
Laura
what
says
it
she can't do
said.
it, it's bad. That must be the summum of horror. Ooh. Vivisecation. Yeah. But do share, Laura.
Okay. So let me
Picture it.
share my screen real quick.
Yeah.
Doo-doo-doo.
Alpha
So-
One says, do you believe less is more in horror, making the reader use their imagination? Absolutely. If you go back, we talked about that earlier, how less is more and how the reader will often create a worse scenario in their head than the actual reality. And that like the dark canvas is more evocative than a filled out canvas. You can either just be a viewer of the horror. So like if you read the horror and everything is explained, you're just like you're not consuming, you're just like watching it. I guess you are consuming. But if you don't know like the monster, you're sort of just creating the horror and participating in the actual creation of the monster, which is more engaging according to Tim Waggoner, which I'm inclined to believe because that makes sense to me. I love that list. Wow. Haha, to be fair, Laura, people stalking you in your own home has happened. Oh God. Okay. I feel there's a horror story there. Do you want a full screen? Like, not this. There you go. Do you want that, Laura? Or do you want a little picture at the bottom?
Either way.
Okay, let's do a little picture just so they have something pretty to look at.
Yay. Okay, nope, that's the wrong document. That's not the one I'm sharing. Here we go. Okay, so the exercise in this book was to go through the 5 flavors of horror. So dread, horror, terror, shock, and disgust. And write the same scene emphasizing the different flavors and then combine them. So this was what I wrote from my version of The Anatomist, but 5 different ways.
Okay.
So here's dread. I kneeled, palms against the wall, holding me upright. I knew he was coming. Cloth shifted behind me, his quiet murmurs of different muscle names carrying in the quiet of the room. Names even I had memorized at this point. Sujin, I whispered, hoping he would hear my plea. Let this be the final time he would dissect my back and study the muscles beneath the skin. More shuffling, and then his breath ghosted along my bare skin, leaving goosebumps in its wake. Take a deep breath, young. My nerves prickled. I knew it was coming. The scalpel. So that's dread.
No. Oh, but
And then
how does he survive?
they sew it back up, let you heal for a bit, and then go on to the next part.
Oh God, humans are disgusting. Sorry, Laura, continue.
So here's the terror version. Sujin, I whispered, hoping he would hear my plea. Let this be the final time he would dissect my back and study the muscles beneath the skin. Take a deep breath, young. He was never going to let me go, never going to stop cutting into me, lifting my muscles one by one to draw and annotate how they moved and looked. I was his plaything, the ticket to untold knowledge. Tears slid down my cheek as a scalpel bit into my back.
Oh my God. Oh, I hate horror.
And here's horror! Sujin, I whispered, hoping he would hear my plea. Let this be the final time he would dissect my back and study the muscle beneath the skin. Take a deep breath, young. My back twitched and bunched as the cool edge of the scalpel bit into my skin, containing my bones and well-studied muscles. I couldn't help the cry from escaping my lips as Sujin sliced deeper without warning. And then shock is my least favorite.
That's also Tim Wagner's least favorite. He says shock is hard to do on page.
Yeah. Sujin, I whispered. Take a deep breath, young. Suddenly, the scalpel sliced through the skin below my shoulder blades. He only wanted me for dissection purposes, nothing more. And then
Mullen says, Laura, I'm eating.
Yay! And then this is the disgust one. So this is where we start getting more queasy.
Do you have a favorite flavor? Oh, just read your story and I'll ask you later.
Okay. Sujin, I whispered, wishing this would be the final time he would dissect my back and study the muscles, peel back the skin and fascia, lift each muscle one by one, stretching them to see where they attached to bone and what their limits were. Take a deep breath, young. The scalpel bit, and warmth ran down my spine as blood welled at the reopened wound. I would never be free of my hundreds of raised, ropey scars. I bit back a scream as his fingernail dug under the flap of skin, peeling it back once more to reveal my fleshy insides, my inner working secrets. I choked as he pinned the skin in place out of the way. And then I did a combo, but then I also wrote the whole flash. So I'll just read my edited flash. So let me find the edited one.
Malin says, muted you for this one. Steve's face tells me everything I need to know. I am disgusted. Respectfully disgusted.
So here's my full-on story. It still needs some help, but here we go. I kneeled, palms forward and bare against the wooden... Oh my gosh, I can totally read. I kneeled, palms forward against the bare wooden wall holding me upright. I knew he was coming. Cloth shifted behind me, his quiet murmurs of different names he had given to muscles carrying in the quiet of the room. Names even I had memorized at this point. Sujin, I whispered, hoping he would hear my plea, wishing this would be the final time he would do this. Let me go with an apology and thank you, whispered against my neck. I dared not glance in the mirror to my side, lest I see. More shuffling, then his breath ghosted along my bare skin, leaving goosebumps in its wake. Take a deep breath, young. No. He wasn't going to stop. I was his plaything and ticket to untold knowledge. Tears ran down my cheek. The scalpel slid between my shoulder blade like a lover's finger, making me twitch. Then it bit. Warmth ran down my spine as hot, thick blood welled at the reopened wound, while Sujin sliced through raised, ropey scars. I choked back a scream as his fingernail dug under the edge of skin, peeling back the flaps once more to reveal my pulsing, fleshy insides. My inner working secrets. I shuddered as he pinned the peeled skin in place with long needles, keeping it out of the way of his observations. Something cold slid between my right muscle he had named Jabusim, lifting and stretching, coaxing like an attentive lover. Look how beautiful you are, murmured Sujin. Relax for me, young. I need to get to the layer deeper underneath. I breathed through my nose harshly, wishing my heartbeat to slow and my muscles to relax. We had come this far. I needed to make the agony worth it. To mean something. That's it. Very good. His soothing voice melted over me, allowing the tension to dissipate from my shoulders. 2 wedges slid into place, keeping my outer muscle lifted to hit his steadying. Young, they're spectacular. You're spectacular. His bare finger rubbed along the revealed muscle, sending a shiver down my spine of both pain and pleasure. Look. He reached around and took my chin in hand, moving my face so I could look in the polished silver mirror. But reflected back made me want to vomit. Me, a naked man, candlelit and kneeling, with a look of painful need, wanting to be desired for more than just my body's innards, tears of agony adorning my face. My back was flayed open and pinned like a butterfly's wings on display. Red wings with white patches that revealed thin fat tissue. Sujin's face was alight with passion and awe, fingers tracing over what he was about to draw in his blood-soaked notebook. His once bleached bone handbook is now splattered scarlet. I'm so proud of you. You're so brave and strong, my beautiful young. A cry escaped my throat as his finger dug in deeper, reaching farther up along the underside of the muscles he called Jabusim, or pride, mapping it out. Somgyojin Jejonsim, he named it, hidden pride. His voice ghosted over my sparking nerve endings, the feel of his hot breath intimate. Then, with his left hand, Sujin drew and labeled, while his right fingers kept exploring. Seconds turned to minutes with each stroke of his inked brush on the paper. Why do you know why I do this? Sujin mused, while continuing to work. My mind reeled, the adrenaline wearing off and leaving me lethargic. You said it was so you could become a doctor. Correct, my dear young. But do you know why I want to become a doctor? His fingers started to trail down my spine, leaving cold streaks in their wake, making me cringe at the feel. I only wanted to feel his warmth, not this. Sujin leaned in close, his chest almost pressed against my splayed open back. It's for your mother, Young. I'm doing it for her. My heart pounded in my ears. I couldn't be hearing him correctly. She's always in so much pain. If I could just understand the body, I'd be able to help save her where the others are failing. Dr. Lee said if I get him this information, he can divine a cure to stop her from dying in a week. He sighed, shifting away from me slightly. She was always so kind to me as a child. Remember when we used to hide behind her skirts when my own mother would come fetch me? That wretched old woman. I hated her to the very end, you know. My aching arms slipped from their position on the wall. Falling forward, my head cracked against the wood, sending me in a woozy tilt. I've got you, Sujin murmured in my ear, collecting me in his arms. You must be in a lot of pain right now. She's dying? I asked, voice fracturing. I hadn't seen her in a year. Had always meant to visit, but life just got in the way. Like chasing Sujin's affections, planting and harvesting. Oh, my poor Young, she never told you, did she? There's something wrong with her muscles, causing her to spasm. It's accelerating alarmingly fast. We fear it might spread to the brain any day now. Why didn't you tell me that sooner? I demanded, curling against his chest, the blocks wedged in my back pulling dangerously. It's unknown if emotion will change our physiology. You needed to be as calm as possible for these explorations. I hissed, and my back arched as the sleeve came into contact with my open wound, pain overriding my anger momentarily. But she's a woman, and I'm a man. And why tell me now? I asked. You're her closest relation, and Shujin clenched me close. My brain whited out from the pain, his words lost in a clamoring of buzzing cicadas in my ears. Wetness hit my forehead. I was being squeezed, and then Sujin slumped to the floor. Sujin, I yelled once the world came back to me enough to get my bearings. I was on my side, curled up in the fetal position, blocks still wedged under the top layer of muscles on my back, stretching me out uncomfortably. Carefully, I sat up and turned to look. There was Sujin, sprawled on the floor, weakly twitching, a red foam at his lips. And then he went still. Sujin. I reached out with my left hand and felt for a pulse. It fluttered once, twice, then stopped. No, I cried. You can't do this to me. I need you. Mom. I collapsed on him, the folds of his clothing clenched to my fists. My eyes watered as I took in the incomplete diagram of my own insides. Mom needed it. Needs it still. I can do this. I'll complete it and save her. Finish what Sujin started. My hands might not be as steady as his had been, but I'll endure this for Mother. But Sujin. Tears flooded my eyes, the world turning blurry and partially dissolved, like a ruined watercolor. He really had cared about me, about my family. Carefully, I pried the scalpel from his lifeless grip and turned my back towards the mirror. The angle was awkward, but I could do this. Must do this. Blinking hard, I wiped my eyes and got to work. The diagram just needed the innermost level of muscles between the shoulder blades to be complete. We've already done my chest, arms, and legs. Got the scars to prove it. This was the final incision, final experiment needed. Gently, I eased the stretching blocks out so I could wedge them in under the newly mapped out muscles one layer deeper. My outer muscle was loose, floppy against the lower. I pried the index finger of my left hand under the newly named muscles on my right side and pulled. I woke up to darkness. Wearily, I opened my eyes. The candles were burnt out stubs, spent while no one was watching. A sliver of moonlight seeped through the high window near the ceiling. Had I blacked out? For how long? A knocking sounded through the house. Someone was at the door. I froze before hope bloomed in my chest. Maybe it was someone who could help. As quickly as I could, I gathered a bloody cloth, notebook, brush, and ink, and pulled my legs under me and stood. The ground tilted. The color swirled. Desperately, I threw an arm out and caught the wall before I collapsed back on the floor. The knocking sounded again. I shuffled towards the front of the home, past sturdy wooden furniture. The slow slats of blood hitting the floor marked the path behind me. I must have ruptured something. The pain was turning away. The man was turning away as I entered the door, holding my items to me to preserve my modesty. Sir, can you help me? I managed to call out weakly. The man in a noble's attire looked back at me, and his eyes widened. Yes, of course. I'm Dr. Lee. What do you need? It was him, the man who would save Mother. I need you to finish this internal drawing for me. I turned on careful feet to show him my splayed open back. His hiss of shock and awe reassured me that this was the right man for the job. I would be honored. Come into the moonlight, and I'll finish what you started. I shuffled out into the surrounding gardens that flanked the path to the door. Trees hid us from any prying eyes. I only made it a few steps before I was kneeling before a large rock. Drape yourself over this stone, the doctor commanded. I'll do the rest. It's for Mom. It's for Mom. I reminded myself. I will save you. The roughness of the cool gray rock against my bare skin grounded me. Hot foreign fingers caressed my exposed muscles. Beautiful, he murmured. But it's not Sujin's voice. It's wrong. He's not. I arced my back as he pulled on the previously stretched out pride muscle to reveal the hidden pride muscles. The scream I swallowed pulled air into my stomach. I can do this. Looks like you just need to see if there's any more muscles beneath this layer, he said while flipping through the journal of notes. Steady yourself. I had no tears left, eyes dry like the sand at the sea Mother and I went to all those years ago. Please. I blacked out once more. It's complete. Sujin must be so happy. He should be okay once I incorporate this. The words were muffled as if underwater. Where was I? The texture of the large rock holding me up grounded me, sharpening my recollection. What? You saved Sujin's life. You're his friend, aren't you? You told me he had a volunteer helping him in this matter. Shock seeped into my blood. My pinned skin was now draped against my ruined back. I'm done. But what do you mean? But my mom. What mother? The heavens cried blood for me.
What do you mean that's the end? What did he do? What murder?
So, for that one,
Well, that was very horrific.
thank you. For that ending, I tried to pull from the different horror endings that Waggoner goes over. And so I pulled the becomes the devil, so that they try and do it themselves. But then also I try to do the reversal of it's not for Mom, it's for Sujin, who's now dead anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, needless to say, you are ready to answer the wrap-up questions. Thank you so much for sharing, Laura. That was a lot, but it is a stream about horror, so if we don't get demonetized, I will probably cut it out. But for now, we're safe. Laura, who is this book for?
Those who want to write horror or those with horror aspects as a subgenre to their book.
I 100% agree. I have horror aspects in my novel, and you write horror, so we fit both those categories. And I guess this is a useless question, but do you see yourself using this in your own process?
Yes.
The book? Yeah. And last but not least, roll the dice. What is your rating out of 6?
I loved it. Yeah, so probably a 6 out of 6 with all of the exercises and stuff.
Yeah, you get a lot of book. It is a 6, Malin. You can now unmute. Yeah, I thought it's a solid 5 for me. It's a little too lengthy for what I got out of it writing craft wise, but I also did not do the exercises, so I guess that's on me. But yeah, no, I thought it was a solid horror book. I think this is a staple for anyone writing horror or wanting to know more about horror.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was really very niche. I'm so sorry, says Malin. I love your writing, but I can't do body horror. It makes my skin crawl. That's so valid, Malin. It also made my skin crawl, but I endured as the host I am. But I'm sure it must have been incredible. It was incredibly horrific. So do with that what you want. Yeah, I think this is a 5 for me. Solid entry novel into writing horror. It's very all-encompassing. Like, you get a lot of money. Nope, you get a lot of money. You don't get a lot of money. You lose money by buying it, in fact, but you get a lot of book for your money.
Yeah.
I had the ebook. I think, as always, it would be easier if I had a physical copy.
Yeah.
And that's definitely something I will think about, because I also had last month's book as an ebook. And it's more difficult to annotate, it's more difficult to kind of use it and wait, I want a lot of money. Yeah, no, I think absolutely this was a solid book on horror and writing darkness in whatever
Yeah.
shape or form that comes to you.
Like, not only did it go over the basics of like different story structures you could follow, but it had the 8 typical horror endings that you can aim for. It had a whole chapter on submitting to anthologies and places to get accepted, to get your publishing credentials going. Like,
It
I
has an
thought that was
entire
great.
chapter on like how to categorize your horror for marketing. It
Yep.
had an entire chapter on marketing your horror and like what to market and what not to market. So you get a lot of book for your money.
Yeah.
So definitely worth checking out if that's something you're interested in checking out. And yeah, I think we don't have time for a sprint. I think we're gonna wrap it up here. So that's been Writers Chatting About Writing in the Dark by Tim Waggoner. Thank you so much to my lovely co-host Laura for answering all questions about horror and what she do in the shadows, I guess. Uh, and for sharing your short story. It was very visceral. Can't believe you read that after me stating for an hour straight that I don't like body horror, but it is
I told
very.
you it was. It was
It
an
was.
anatomist.
Yeah. Oh my god. That was a lot for horror. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here, Marlon, and everyone else, Alpha One, and anyone else in the chat. Solid endorsement. Yeah, you get a lot of book for your money, and it's a great book if you're looking to write horror. It was a fun stream indeed. Next month there'll be no craft stream because I'll be focusing on trying to finish this goddamn draft. But the book for December is going to be on Writing and World Building Volume 2, and I'm doing that with Mars as a co-host. So if that's something you're interested, look out for a stream that I'll set up at some point in time. Um, and that's it for today, I think. Thank you so much for being a gracious co-host, Laura. Thank you so much for sharing your horror experience and your thoughts about writing horror. Is there anything else you want to say to the children before we leave them horrified?
If you want to keep up on what I'm writing and my querying journey and stuff, I do have a Substack for my newsletter.
Oh, you do? Share. Share, share, share,
Yeah.
share.
Let me find it.
I love a good newsletter. Yeah, my name is Stieg. Next month, I'm back to regular streams on Tuesdays. I'm also going to do a couple of Thursdays because I want to get as much writing as I can. When it says, bye guys, yes, I did. I did mute lol, but I enjoyed talking about the type of horror and the whys of it. Yes, Stig, where the links at? They are not set up yet. I'm so sorry, but I'm a busy boy, Lee. I'm also going to stream some with Marlon next month, and she's going to do some Thursday streams to check out for those. And thank you so much, everyone, for sticking around this horrific chat about Writing in the Dark by Tim Waggoner. I'm going to wait for Laura to post her Substack link because I'm a slut for a good newsletter.
Okay.
Laura working at high speed. There you go. There's the newsletter. I'm going to start that comment so we can find later. There's Laura's newsletter. You should definitely check that out. I'm definitely going to subscribe to it as soon as we shut down. And yeah, thank you so much for being here. Laura might come back for some writing sprints in November, maybe. Who
I would
knows?
love
Who knows?
to.
Now that you're a full-time American, maybe you have time. Or did you move back to Canada? No, you moved away from Canada.
I am currently in California. I'm going back to Canada November 10th to officially move all my stuff out of my apartment and let it go.
The mourn of who you were once,
Yeah,
who you once were. Oh, did you get a subscription?
maybe.
That'd be so funny, just live on main. But yeah, thank you so much. Next Tuesday will be another regular writing sprint, and that's what we're doing for the rest of November. And then we'll bring Writers Chat back for December. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you later.